Senator David Pocock.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. I rise to speak on the Paid Parental Leave Amendment Bill before us. In doing so, I note the worthy and very welcome aims of this bill in assisting to close the gender pay gap and provide greater freedom to dads and partners taking time out to spend with their newborn children. It is important we get this right, as there is a lot at stake, most importantly the well-being of the next generation. Research overwhelmingly shows the benefits of parents taking time out of work to spend time with their newborns. It's important for bonding, but also for the mental health and well-being of parents. Throughout the committee process, I've also seen evidence on the well-being benefits for dads. These are the kinds of benefits we have the opportunity to promote through this bill. But more broadly, for our economy, we know that we need to be doing more to lift women's economic participation. The National Skills Commission estimated that 1.2 million additional workers will be needed across the economy by 2026. A large majority of these roles will be in traditionally feminised industries, such as those in the care economy. We are feeling those impacts even now as we look at the shortages of registered nurses that are available to enter the aged care system. Modernising our paid parental leave scheme is one lever we can pull to help close the participation gap and, by extension, the pay gap. Deloitte recently reported that more flexible ideas around gender norms could lead to an additional $128 billion each year for Australia's economy and deliver 461,000 additional full-time employees into the economy. And when we look across the world, there is ample research to show how tweaking PPL schemes can work to lift women's economic participation and close the gender pay gap. This bill presents a first step on that pathway. There's plenty that's good about this bill. Firstly, the bill allows all paid parental leave days to be taken as flexible days. Allowing flexibility in how new parents manage care and work is a good thing for both parents and businesses. It means that parents and partners can manage a gradual return to work in a way that suits them and their needs. It respects that each parent and every family will have different circumstances, whether that's a grandparent that is able to help with care or a job with irregular hours. For businesses, a gradual return to work is also optimal. As the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry notes, forcing people to take 12 consecutive weeks off work has always been an unnecessary feature of the current scheme. In reality, it's far easier for a business to manage a partial vacancy rather than a full vacancy, and it's likely that these changes will help strengthen the contact between employers and employees while a person is using PPL. I also welcome the positive changes for dads and partners. For too long, women have shouldered the greatest burden of caring responsibilities for newborns. Currently, 80% of all paid parental leave is claimed by women. This is despite a host of evidence showing the benefits of fathers being able to take time to care for newborns in their first years of life, including improved well-being for both dads and children. These changes do the right thing by giving dads and partners greater access to a shared PPL entitlement, which I hope will give more incentive to take time out of work. While there's plenty to be proud of in this bill, it really should be seen as a first step. There's so much more to do. Given the workforce shortages being felt in various industries, I feel this bill misses an opportunity to accelerate those changes needed to unlock greater workforce participation by women. The bill will not increase the overall PPL entitlement. It joins together the current 18-week scheme with the separate 2-week dad and partner pay scheme into a single 20-week entitlement that can be used by both parents. While it is the government's stated ambition to reach 26 weeks by 2026, it is not included in this bill. As of right now, the 26-week entitlement remains just an ambition. And even after we reach 26 weeks, Australia will still lag behind other OECD nations. The OECD average is 51 weeks, which is more than double what is offered in this bill. PPL is also not offered at a replacement wage. Rather, it is offered at the minimum wage. So at full-time equivalent pay, the OECD average is 36 weeks, while Australia currently offers just 8.6 weeks. We know that more is required to increase participation of dads and partners in PPL and to stimulate workforce participation by women. We know this because the international research in this area is well advanced. And when we look across the world, we can see clearly the policy ingredients that are needed. A big ingredient is the use it or lose it period. That is the period within the whole entitlement that is reserved for just one claimant to use. Under this bill, the use it or lose it periods are set at 2 weeks for each claimant. This is basically what already happens under the current scheme, and so far there has been very little uptake of PPL by men. Nordic countries that have implemented dedicated parental leave for fathers have seen significant increases in uptake by men. To give one example, when Iceland introduced 13 dedicated weeks for fathers in 2002, the number of fathers who took leave increased from less than 1% to 80%. I feel it is a shame that this bill does not contemplate longer use it or lose it periods to greater effect, knowing from international experience that they have been making a huge impact. However, I'm aware that this is a question that the Women's Economic Equality Task Force is currently considering, and it will form part of another bill on this subject later in the year. A big concern that's been raised with me through consultations on this bill is around the continued administrative burden that PPL is putting on our small businesses. And these small businesses are increasingly being run by women who are having to shoulder this burden. With this bill, we have an opportunity to change that by giving small business the option to either pay Commonwealth PPL direct or to have Services Australia pay this, as they already do for 40% of payments. I believe there's a really strong argument for medium and large businesses to administer the payment and to ensure that there is a connection between them and the employee taking the leave. However, for small, overworked businesses, we need to be doing all we can to reduce the amount of red tape and cost for them. Even small changes to a payroll can have a big impact on a small business. Small businesses who need to liaise with the government, grapple with how to manage the flow of cash between Services Australia and their employee, and recalculate how much tax needs to be withheld. It is a clear pain point, and it's something that has been raised with me by businesses in my community, the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Canberra Business Chamber, and the Australian Hairdressing Association, and others. And it's not a new concern. It was something that was raised with the Parliament when it was first contemplating PPL over a decade ago now. It was then raised again in a review of that Act, which I found, and I quote here, "Employer and industry groups generally did not support the employer role, particularly in relation to small business." To continue to quote, "These stakeholders considered the employer role places an unnecessary administrative burden on business, and any benefits to employers in terms of employee retention were not commensurate with the administrative burden imposed." This is feedback that has been reflected in my conversations with small businesses here in the ACT. Kate from the Healthy Eating Clinic told me how her small business employing 11 people has seen payroll processing time blow out from half an hour to 2 hours. And that lost time is precious and adds up. We hear a lot about the workforce shortages, and in many small businesses, it's the owners of those businesses who have to step up and work extra hours to fill the gap. This burden on small businesses will likely increase when hopefully we start paying super on Commonwealth PPL as well. And that means small business will be logging onto MyGov, receiving money from the Commonwealth, withholding tax and sending it back to the ATO, processing super, and then sending that on to the super fund, and doing this every pay cycle. None of these transactions involve any interaction between the business and the staff members, other than a deposit of money and an emailed payslip. But the greater burden risks being a disincentive to employing women, the last thing we want to see with this legislation. I have been frustrated to hear that we shouldn't take action because it has always been a pain point. Clearly, just because something has always been broken doesn't mean that it shouldn't be fixed. It's also frustrating to hear that we need to force small businesses to administer this payment, as it will preserve their relationship with their employees. Small businesses are likely to be far closer to their employees than medium and large businesses, where often in small businesses your staff may also be family, if not technically, then in spirit. And some small businesses may want to administer the payment themselves, and that's fine. We should provide them with the option, recognising small businesses are as unique as the people that run them and require some flexibility. It is a small piece of red tape that we can start cutting today, and I hope the Senate will endorse my amendment. I also want to join my colleagues across the chamber in urging the government to prioritise changes to extend super to paid parental leave. PPL is currently one of the only types of paid leave for which the superannuation guarantee does not apply. Paying super on PPL would significantly reduce the super gap between men and women. Currently, women retire with nearly 35% less super than men, which is clearly unacceptable and something we need to address. One last point that I wanted to bring to the attention of the Senate are issues with how we are supporting foster and kinship carers. While this bill contemplates adoption, I want to note that adoptions are generally quite rare in comparison to the amount of children in foster or kinship care. Foster and kinship carers are not entitled to PPL. It has been raised with me that the exclusion of foster and kinship carers from this type of leave actively discourages those carers from taking opportunities to welcome and settle often very vulnerable children into a new home environment, and we know how important those early years are for children. One of my constituents has seen the impact firsthand. She was able to take time away from work to spend with a child placed in her care, and noted how it promoted steadiness in their relationship, which endures today. She also experienced not being able to take time away with another child and experienced a placement breakdown as a result of this. And she's raised with this with me, and to quote her, to have those extra weeks to focus on the child, set aside employment pressures, is invaluable to the child or young person to build bonds and attachments crucial to their development. While foster and kinship care is the domain of the states and territories, no payment is offered to help them take time out of their work. It seems to me that foster and kinship carers are falling between a gap in our federal, state and territory systems, and that more can and should be done to assist them in taking time out of work for the benefit of the child or the children that they are looking after. I urge the government to consider this in more detail, and I thank you. I commend the bill to the Senate.